Prof. Barbara, are you ready, Prof?
Yeah.
Dr. Umar, who will be giving the talk?
No, I will be presenting on behalf of Dr. Barbara.
Okay, okay. All right, I think we'll begin. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Please give your whole attentions. My name is Dr. Kumara, so I'd like to welcome you all to Agriculture IoT and Big Data e-workshop series. For your informations, I'll be moderating this session, which is titled Transitioning in Farm Practices. For your today's webinar series will be co-hosted by the Faculty of Agro-Based Industry at University of Kelantan, and also World Resource Webinar, which is led by Dr. Krishnan Umachandran. Distinguished visitors and students today, we have the leading agricultural expert from all around the world sharing their knowledge with us, which is Prof. Dr. Barbara Sawicka. Is our honorable speaker for these sessions. Agriculture innovation and knowledge are reshaping the agriculture futures, and Prof. Barbara will share with us her knowledge and experience with us today. So Prof. Barbara is currently based at the University of Life Sciences, Faculty of Agro-Bioengineering in Lublin, Poland. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our distinguished speaker, Prof. Barbara. Please, the floor is yours, Prof.
Professor Kumara, I'm going to present on behalf of Dr. Barbara.
Okay.
Okay, can you see the screen?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Okay, further, moving from the Industry 4.0, let's come to the reality of what's happening on the farm practices. So this presentation, is being done on behalf of Dr. Barbara Sawicka, professor from Lublin, Poland. See, the contents to be shared with you are introduction, innovation, activity, and strategy, counseling form of the knowledge which happens in agriculture, then the modeling of science, then the advisory that happens in agriculture, conclusions, and a takeaway of this presentation. See, there's some loggerheads between agriculture and engineering is one which is predominant and much not told to the outside world. Which comes first? Is it agriculture or engineering? Because many of these practices are from engineering forced onto agriculture. This is the reality. Agriculture wants to have yield optimization. That is the prime requirement of an agriculture. But engineering is the one which wants to do a deconstructing the complexity of the agriculture. And doing that, what it does is it wants to have a technology transfer and then design solution and transfer of it to the farmers, who are the end users or the cycle providers for this agriculture. So Industry 4.0 is a technology transfer which goes into identifying the nitty-gritties of the agriculture and then positioning onto it. So this transit or the transitioning of farm practices are all towards the modern sciences that are required for agriculture. So the new approach of agricultural practices are wide open across the world, not only in one part of the world. It is a kind of a throbbing activity which happens all across the world. The activities are like, you wanted to have a sustainable practice. That's what is required in an agriculture. But to manage it within a time and space, you need to have a lot of things which are value driven, which are traditional driven, which are skills, which are motivation aspects, and many things. So, but to do this, what you need to do is you have to do a adaptation and adopt new techniques. These are the things which are being forced onto the farmers because of this transitioning of farm practices. And to do this, there is an advisory board also being constructed in many organizations or many countries. And what we are going to show you now is a thing which happens in the Europe. In Europe, there was a thing called a Lisbon strategy, which was done before the automation or thing of mechanizations of the farm practices came. So this is the one which made scientists go through not only the agronomic factors that impacts them, but they also have to consider technical, social, and structural changes and then committed towards the farmer for a sustainable transition so that the farm segment and the sector as a farm is also covered. So the scientists were not only doing their aspect of the scientific revolution, but they have to consider and live with other things. So a multidisciplinary kind of a requirement came to the agricultural scientist. That is where transitioning of farm practices came into existence. So to this, the Lisbon strategy, what they did was, they wanted to have, they had a lot of knowledge. Every farmer has a extensive knowledge. And the people who were supporting farm practices were also having knowledge. And there were human resources which were also available. So to bring the knowledge and the human resource together and transfer the knowledge to a decision making with quality, which can affect the agriculture, is what Lisbon strategy had prioritized. See, this Lisbon strategy had a lot of frameworks on which the total transitioning could happen. They went into R&D, the research and innovation part one, and then the regenerative practices and nature-based approaches. Then they got into training, transparency, traceability, and cross-sector cooperation. These were the 5 factors on which the total transition of sustainable agriculture went across the world, not only in Lisbon. For this, what they did was, in research and innovation, they understood the challenges and they wanted to bring in innovative solutions. This was the aspect of research. And then on to the research regenerative practices, they went on to sustainable practices, soil health, and the biodiversity, because both are required. So we should not pollute or pollinate any of this with wrong practices. So they wanted to have a cautious approach towards soil health and biodiversity. Then on to the training and education, they went into farm to fork. What you want to have on your dining table should be from the farm. It should be of quality, and it should be transitionable, and it should be sustainable. This is what the training and education took up. Then the transparency and traceability, because this was most towards the consumers, because the consumer is the one who's going to see your label and buy a product. So you should be in a position to bring transparency and traceability, which the consumer can really understand about the informed decisions that can happen during this transition. The last one is the cross-sector cooperation that has a lot of experience that can be shared across all the stakeholders in farming, right from agriculture-oriented person who's called as a farmer, the landlords, the people who are supporting the business people who are onto it for their stake. All these people as an industry went on to work towards sustainable transition of agriculture. This is where the United Nations came again. The FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization, they said we wanted to have a sustainable part of agriculture, but that should meet the generation's needs. It should not be only for the past or present, and for the future we should consider with profitability. This is where the business came. Health, social, and economic equality was again a point that was pushed into making agriculture into a mechanization form. Already there was an impact of climate change and transition to sustainable agriculture, pushing things towards agriculture to change towards mechanization, automation, and the evolution of intelligence usage, which Industry 4.0 is now attempting to touch upon. See, the farm to fork strategy. It means they took up this point, like, greenhouse gases. This has to be reduced from 50%. So that you can have 25% of the agricultural land for organic farming. See, it was already polluted with chemicals and pesticides and fertilizers, but then they wanted to revamp it, regenerate it to a better practice. And so they said, at least by 2030, we'll have a Green Deal, the pact that can be done, which we can reduce the greenhouse gases and increase the agricultural land, where we can apportion around 25% for organic. Then use renewable energy, biofertilizers, chemicals, and waste valorizations to be controlled. These were the things on which they had formulated the strategy. And then protecting the communities and natural habitats was the goal of the United Nations. To do this, FAO had come out with a farm and fork strategy. See, it was easy as long as things were on the lab levels. The research and innovation was good. research understood the requirements of the farm. Innovation was scalable. There was a lot of good transitioning happen, and they also tried to have robots in place of human beings to monitor crops, livestock, etc., using satellite data, artificial intelligence, and all the stuff. And then the AI platform came in to predict whether you have a reality of the ecosystems that are being used, and to conserve the resources so that you minimize the waste also. This was all okay as long as research to innovation was happening. But the regenerative part was the reality. If you want to bring in solutions that can inspire the nature, then you need to have your processes that should not avoid or damage the land. So if you want to have a restoration or a rehabilitation, then you should also think about cost effectiveness, environmental effectiveness, social and economic benefits that it can come. So this was the linkage that was all derived and pushed the agricultural scientists to think beyond their scalability by linking themselves with a multidisciplinary kind of a group. When it comes to regenerative, the basic thing is everyone knows, like minimize the soil disturbance. Don't disturb the soil. That is more important. Second, reduce or minimize your chemicals, because you have been using it, but you cannot stop it right away, but reduce it. Then maximize biodiversity. It's not only you or we are going to be living. There are a lot of other beings that are there. So we have to take consideration of it. And while we convert the crops, we have to see a long-term possibility. It's not for a short term, it's for a long term, and then adapt it for a local environment. This was the basic principles on which the regenerative aspects are required for transitioning of a farm practice. This, when it is made into a farm to fork, what happens is you need to give a sustainable way, how it can inspire the farmer to also adopt new. All along, they have been practicing a certain kind of a life. And suddenly, if you want to say, go and teach them how to do work, they may not take. So how to create it, it's where the real challenge came to this group of people who are administering the change practices. They wanted to have a validating products of services, then connecting farmers to a training. You got the farmers back to school, which was unheard of for those in a segment. When you want to have this kind of a farm for, what the requirement was, you have to create a test farm, make things possible, and then show the latest innovation and show that the food, what they are preparing, is safe, very safe. It is not from the formidable or things which challenge the life or livelihood of people. So these were the things that were taken into practice, and then the farmers were taken like a tour to these places to make a change in their minds so that they can adopt to new practices. This was the basic thing for transitioning farm practices. But again, it should not be on the one side, the starter end. It should be on the end user end. That's the consumer. Consumer should also be made informed that they can buy products which are having a good role and have a informed purchasing decisions. This is where the two links which the market oriented or the business oriented pressures came onto agriculture, making a transitioning of farm practices. See, when it comes to farm, it's lovely. It is always good. But there is an ecosystem where plant and animal, and they live in a natural resource. But suddenly, if you want to bring in sustainable, they are already sustainable. But you want to have a new practice put into place, then means you need to have a thing which is understood by the stakeholders who can take up. So water was checked, soil was checked, air was checked, and the landscape and the biodiversity was checked, threadbare. And then the agricultural practices were put forth before this transitioning was planned to be positioned before a farmer. See, when it comes to farming, see, everyone knows it's our own feed balance. See, nature feeds itself. We need not go and feed it. We need to only protect it from being misappropriately used. So the balance of minerals and organic substances, that has to be checked. So for this, what you need to do, you have to analyze the conditions of the farm, and then you have to have a control over the environmental requirements of the individual fields so that you prevent erosion, which was the major stake that can be told to a farmer. This aspect had three pronged kind of approaches. See, everything in business was economical. So they linked everything as economical thing, and it was posed on agriculture. And when this transition was happening, ecology and social requirements were also affected. These were the second factor that was pushed into. Why? Because plant production and animal production happened within themselves and not by man. So these are the three factors which were done as a transition, and so that the stakeholders can have a control over the agriculture as a business perspective. Here comes the farm management. The air is known, water is known, soil is known. But when it comes to management, what happens in between, nobody knows. Like the minerals, the plant production, the crop changing, the cultivation system, many things were done with greed. And so this transitioning was more a finance-oriented kind of a pull rather than a protective ecosystem kind of a balance. Now, why I'm telling you all this reality is there are certain things in life which we human beings cannot have. Like this figure, if you see NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium are required for human beings, but human being cannot produce it and consume it. It can come only through plant. In addition to this, calcium, sulfur, copper, manganese, magnesium, boron, all these things are required through soil to the plant, and then from the plant, we get energized. We means the ecosystem, the plant, animals, and human beings. For this, the documentation is required. So we have to have a current soil and mapping system. Then we need to have the basic nutrients listed out. Then the field cards, the information of the animal herds, the records and receipts of all the landscapes. Then the loan capital, because again here the money goes into agriculture, and that's where the transitioning of practices started happening in farm practices. So coming on to this, what happened was somewhere down the line we need to start a work, and so the agricultural practices had one kind of a combination that went into their creeping, which was called the mixing of species. They took complementary species. They also tested with competitive species between the plants. And then they wanted to see whether, because they cannot create a plant, they had to have the plant which is existing, and then they wanted to see which would be the better helpful part for their maximization of their benefits. For this, they started having a lot of intermix of multi-species species of plants. They have gone up to 6 species being intercropped. It was nice. It was helping, because as you have more density of plants, it took care of your erosion. It helped the stability of the plants. But what happened is there could be weeds that needs to be also taken out, so that the required intercrop is really facilitated. So they have tried even up to 6 levels. And then this mixing of species, what happened was it increased the weed, pest, and disease control. This was the better part of it. It gave a lot of stability and the effective use of natural resources like water, nutrients, space, etc. And they also tried attempting new innovative thinking of special mixing. What other plants can be got into as a mixing part of this species. As these things were happening, more of legumes were being done with in a lot of crop rotations. They introduced a lot of vegetable proteins into it. They wanted to have a lot of nitrogen, fertilization, and pesticides combinations to be involved into this mixing of species. And then they used a mixture of species that can provide solutions to a modern agricultural and market demand, which was not a real demand. It was a market-oriented demand on which agriculture has been now forced onto. Right, soil is required, but soil gets eroded. This is the pathetic situation of a soil, because soil cannot be rigid. If soil is rigid, no plant can grow. So what happens is how you protect the soil and the water, which is the real requirement for the plant to grow. The after seed crop seedings were the ones which were more given importance. After the main crop was harvested, then the stubble catch crop and the winter catch crop were also made implanted, so that the soil is protected and it is not vulnerable to the climatic changes. This was the first point which helped in transitioning the farm practices, which the agricultural farmers also accepted. Then came the counteracting part of water erosion and pollution. Like, so that if you do this kind of a patch protection to the landscape, then your nutrient runoff is protected. You're increasing the organic soil matter, and you have also, controlling the ecosystems, like birds and animals were also using this as a feed base or a food base. This was the positive point on which agriculture farmers also accepted. Then the stubble came, right from mustard, sunflower, you have a lot of buckwheat, a lot of, catch crops that grows as per the geographical requirements. A lot of things were into place. And then the winter catch also came with oilseed rape. And then you had a mixture of vintage vetch and a lot of things after the stable, then the winter, so that you protect all 4 seasons. Right after the winter, the summer you harvest, and then you take care of the autumn, you protect it. And then again on spring, you again get onto your launch of new cropping. So this, after catch crops, what happened was more to controlling over use of pesticides. This was the one they tried. And they also had a lot of livestock hovering around this area. That's called, they went on the grazing density. So that these things were agriculture, the farmers accepted. Then the wild field, the field had a wild application. When they wanted to have a wild application, see, when you have a farm, you cannot grow your crops on all across your farm. You need to have a control. Then only you can manage, and you can protect and make it grow. So what happens to the surplus areas? How to protect it? And all those things were also done and shown to the farmers so that they can understand the transitioning of farm practices. For this, they first formed a buffer zones, so that you create the field into different areas so that one area does not affect the other, and you have a pathway so that you can transport, you can divide and demarcate, and you control. Divide and rule actually happened, so that the pesticides does not spill over to another area, and you still have a water flow in between. You can have irrigation canals dug between these things, and material flow, everything can happen. They wanted to have a 2 meter to 5 meter kind of demarcation based on a poor soil or a good soil. This was the first thing they started. And then when you want to have a buffer zone to be protected, see, that means you're reducing your agreeable, real productive land. So then you have to reduce the fertilizers and chemicals that are used in your protection. So that also agriculture and their farmers agreed. Then you have the appropriate, zone, to have a clear edge of the ditch slope. From the ditch slope, how to protect it. You also made a kind of engineering for them to understand. And then the digital, undesirable vegetations to be removed, so that this area becomes blanketed as a differing area from the productive area and to a non-productive or a usable area. These were the things that was done, and these area were mowed once a year. And farmers were also accepting. What resulted was the soil culture improved. One, because the nitrogen runoff was not more, and the groundwater, and it was not running into your groundwater and surface water. So this was accepted. So transitioning of farm practices was accepted. Then for this, what happened? They did a cleaning up of the straws after harvest, regeneration of vegetation, manure application, and they used pesticides based on the advices from the experts. And then the grazing stock limit, everything was given as a parameter to be controlled. And that was also accepted by farmers for transitioning. Then you had wide, green fields where you had the winter and stable catch crops grown, which was not affecting your main crop. So this was protecting your area, your land, your soil. And thereby what happened was about 50 to 75% of the erosion risk was protected when green fields was taken into consideration. Along with green fields came the green fallow. Green fallow is nothing but once in 5 years, you change the location where you want to have your main crop, so that the soil culture is protected and it is arable, and it also protects your micro mesofauna. So your small animals are also allowed to graze, they have their habitat for living. This was the green fallow that was created. And these things also made a control over your herbicides use and pesticides use. They also limited your sowing. You need not go sow all across, but you concentrate on certain areas and do. And then in a catch crop, you can use lupin, sedalum, mustard, grass, or whatever it is, so that you have a control over your soil, plateaus. And also have a selective weed control. This was what the farmers also agreed. Then came the soil erosion. Soil, when water flowed, it rubbed and etched away all the nutrients in the soil. So they wanted to have a kind of a piping circuits where a valley of water forms. Then you pipe it all across so that the mid portion of the patch of the land is not eroded, so that the water gets passed and it flows. And so the erosion control happens, and you have a soil of good nutrient available all across. Then came the open spaces. There are areas where you cannot every time keep growing plants. So soil testing was done. You did liming, and then soil cultivation with the purchase of seeds from the outside external people, or from the things which you had from the fallow land. And then restoration of open spaces came into place, so that the open spaces were also made into agreeable lands. The final part is maintaining open space is not a big job, because if you have meadows, you need to mow it and maintain it with a good biodiversity. At least once a year, you may not get money out of it, but you need to do mowing. And you have to have an invasive vegetation, so that you don't have neglected land. You still have a protected land. It has a biodiversity. It has a landscape full of values, and it also helps spread the weeds, so that you can position it and use it. These are the things which made transitioning of your farm practices reach the farmer, and farmer also accepted the modern practices of farm. With this, I stop my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Umar. So thank you, Prof. Barbara. So with this, thank you very much for the sessions. Please, if our guests, any questions?
I do have a question.
Right.
Yeah.
Please proceed.
I would like to ask, if you have experience with this, the paddy plantation or paddy cultivations, okay? How is it, for tropical area, okay, to implement some sort of regenerative and sustainable way in producing rice, and then part of that to integrate the latest technology, okay, on how those changes, is there any data from rural or people are working, farmers basically adapting the regenerative cultivation, and also using the latest tech to help them to increase the yield and so become more fertile and improve their productions? Do you have any experience on that?
Can you tell a keyword, because we lost, we couldn't catch whatever you said.
Experience from your research whatsoever on the rice cultivations, that adapting the regenerative cultivation and using the high-tech technology in improving their yield and also their production and increase their soil fertility.
Professor Barbara, would you take this question? They're asking on rice cultivation.
And also regenerative cultivation.
Regionality of how to improve the
if you have any experience
yield.
Hello, welcome to all participants of the webinar at your guest university. Thank you for invitation on this webinar. It's very nice me, and thank you for the question, but I please ask question by email. I will answer specific you soon. Okay.
Okay. So if you can send an email to Professor Barbara, she will
yes,
send you a reply.
Email I sent.
Sure. So, okay,
Okay.
one last question. How the regenerative cultivations can be adopted to tropical area? I mean, what kind of methods, also any technology that can be used so that farmers can know what actually they can implement those steps. We can share some experience from these, your countries or from India's, okay, they're being implemented.
Okay, you're from which country, Mohammed?
I'm from Malaysia.
From Malaysia, right? See, Malaysia has more of rice cultivations, and they also have more of timber, in unused lands, and they have palm. These are the three major, agro-based growth that happens in the farms. But when it comes to area, each specific area has its own requirement. For example, if you want to have rice, what variety of rice? Because see, you won't grow any rice which is not economical to you. It means you have a kind of a requirement. So you need to test your soil, whether that variety of rice grows in your soil. And then for each specific plant variety that needs to be grown, there is a gestation period or a growth period within which you have to do a harvesting. Are you requiring that? See, there is a lot of things, when it came to India, I'll give you a specific thing about India. See, India had been depending more on rice, and there was a variety which was discovered by MS Swaminathan, which was called as IR8. IR8 came in because it had a shorter growth rate time. See, normally when a rice is being planted and you want to have sown and harvested, it takes its own time of around 6 months because it goes through a season. Whereas if you want to have more productivity, IR8 was done because it had 3 months as its growth period. So based on which the total India went on for handling the rice requirement by using this variety. So, now you have to see what is your requirement and use what variety of rice you want to get planted and harvested out.
Does it answer your question, Dr. Nafais?
That's correct, I understand. So only I'm concerned that how the the variety is always is the top priority to increase yield. However, in terms of these field operations, and then basically the farmers, they practice the conventional practice where they implement a lot of chemical and also how the regenerative solutions that are available for the farmers so that they can still producing rice while maintaining the environment or agro biodiversity so that they won't lose the land fertility for the next coming seasons. How your advice to the farmers, to the audience, in fact, for us. So that
it's quite a difficult question, Dr. Mohammed. It's very, very difficult question to handle. Reason is, see, everyone is selfish. Why do you use chemicals? It's because you want to have a booster to a plant. And you want to protect the plant so that you are benefited from it. But the whole world is now going organic. That's where organic comes. When you have organic, your yield is reduced, your productivity is reduced, your economy is going to be reduced. But what you're going to do, your pricing will be more. This is where the business is going to step in. So the business steps in, saying it, there's a premium product of agriculture that can be priced and used by you, but you should not follow, or you have to restrain yourself from using these chemical products. And the chemical products are again, from the business class only. They are the ones who are producing it. But, this is the catch on which you have to work. See, everyone knows if you protect your soil, if you have a better air, you have a better water, and you have a better conditions and a good ecosystem around yourself, your plant life is going to be good. Everyone knows, not only the farmer, everyone knows. But when it comes to practice, everyone is thinking about the money and then they play with it. These are the things which are affecting your farm practices.
Understand. Very clear.
I think we have one question in the chat there. Can either Dr. Umar or from Barbara take the questions? The question said, what are the key enablers for IoT implementation among the rural farmers?
See, first of all, I said even in the last session, If you can go for IoT, you can use all your industry 4.0 technologies, provided your land or availability of or scope is more. If your scope is less, do not attempt it. You better go with your normal form of farming and go towards organic, where you can get premium placed and sell your product. If you have bigger scope to play, then you can have water sensors, air monitoring, you can have climatic conditions being monitored, you can use drone technology, you can have biotechnology into place, where you can have a lot of hybrids also to come into protecting your place. Then you will have a better water management systems. All these things can come, and everything can have an IoT enabled process to be handled. See, it is only imagination. If we are lazy, we can use more of our brain. If you want to use more of your brain, you can use more of your sensors. If you want to use more of your sensor, you can sit and work on your tablet PC, and you can control your land. But everything is an investment. Are you capable of investing? If you are, then you try it. Otherwise, these are good. You can learn, you can understand. Let me tell you practically, this is what is the reality.
Yeah. Thank you, Toma. And any other questions from the members? No?
No.
Okay. If no questions, please, if you have any other further question, you can always email Prof. Barbara. She already given the email address in the chats. And then again, finally, we have come to the end of the sessions. I would like to thank Prof. Barbara and Dr. Umar for the very informative sharing sessions with us today. Please, next time, probably we will invite for visitation to UMK in Malaysia. That will be our coming. Now, with this, I'd like to thank you, both of you. I would like to also to announce that next week on Monday, we'll have one more sessions, which on the 28th March, which is still with the World Webinar Series, which is led by Dr. Umar, on the big data and automotive in agro-based food manufacturing, and big data and automations in animal husbandry, which will be on Monday next week, 28th March, 2 to 4 p.m. Please join us for next week's sessions. All right, with this, thank you, Dr. Umar. Thank you, Prof. Barbara.
Dr. Kumara, you're forwarding that test paper to them?
Yeah. The test is already in the link. Please, can you all answer the question in the chat there? Dr. Leonie?
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.